Здравствуйте, Дмитрий. Как ты поживаешь сегодня? Замечательно.
Let's get started. We call this meeting of Saanich Council to order on Monday, July 20th. This is going to be a regular council meeting tonight, followed by our town hall format afterwards. That will actually close the council down and it'll be a free-for-all. We'll get on with the agenda. So we'll start with the first item, adoption of minutes. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This first item is the adoption of the minutes of the special council meeting of July 7th and the council and committee of the whole minutes of July 13th.
Second.
No question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, so we'll move on to the next item, which is public input on items C, D, and E on the agenda. These are the resolutions for adoption, recommendation from committees, and reports from advisory committee chairs. If you'd like to come and speak on the Walk This Way sewage treatment strategy, the CRD referral of the publicly owned sewage treatment sites, the privately owned sewage treatment sites, our 2015 legal budget, our 2016 budget guidelines, Board of R&B Cabin Chassis, the 50th anniversary of Saanich Municipal Hall, and the Nuns Like Us presentation. All of these are open for public input. So with that, I'd like to invite the first person to come forth, and please give your name and your address. That's most appreciated. And you've got 5 minutes.
I was promised that this would be okay. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and the Council. My name is Tony Rose. I live in Beckton Road in Saanich, and I'm a retired chemical engineer. And a few things I wanted to address, but I'm going to switch straight away to the sewage problem here. I certainly support your decision to revisit the proposal. As the largest contributor, both physically and economically, it's an opportunity for Saanich to take the reins. I see this project as one that could give very quickly council a unity of purpose. A one or possible two-site solution should be our only focus. Based on existing plans worldwide, we need at the very least 20 acres, so many of those sites you're considering should be thrown out the door. There are other large sites worthy of consideration besides Watkis in Saanich, and I hope you will consider them along with the Watkis Gateway proposal. Elk and Beaver Lake have several 30-acre potential sites. shown one here near the CRD maintenance yard. The land is free, it's flat, it's accessible and it's isolated. Compared to Watkis Way, it's publicly owned and not ALR. It is located farther from the existing discharge points, but I'll give you several other advantages later. The single site solution means that you don't disturb and you take full advantage of the existing sewer collection system. But I strongly advise you that you don't touch any of the existing system. I've shown here, as I say, I've shown the site near the CRD maintenance yard. The single site solution, again, I reinforce, is it means you don't disturb and you take full advantage of the existing sewage collection system. One possibility, if we use that site, is that we use Out Lake as a reservoir for agricultural water. There's little point in cleaning up the water if you don't use it. Right now we have a screening process which takes out 90% of the solids. You're going to spend an awful lot of money to take out the other 10%. And you want to spend it if you then end up putting the water back into the salt water. It makes no sense whatsoever. You need to use that water. That should be the prime objective of the water treatment plant. Not removing waste, but giving you a clean source of water. The selection of the site is just the first small prerequisite of any project. We're really at the very first step here. So how do we develop that plan, that site? What we do is we put multiple modular units on one site. These would be factory built. Each unit would serve about 10 to 15,000 people. 20 acres minimum for a single site, possibly 2 sites. Leave all the existing collection in place, repair and upgrade. 30 identical units built over a 15-year period, possibly using local fabrication. Much lower and more efficient engineering and fabrication costs. You build the first 2 units as pilot plants. You convince all the naysayers and yourselves that the thing actually works. It's a staggered investment and replacement. There's no large debt. And I'll come back to that in the next few graphs. Multiple ownership by the municipality. Saanich, with the population we have, would own 10 units. It's affordable, it's easy to construct, it's easy to operate. There's a huge amount of built-in redundancy. If one plant fails, it makes no difference. If a large plant fails, you're out. It's expandable. There's no loss of capacity on an unplanned shutdown. It's easily maintained and operated by municipal staff. You don't have to bring in outside contractors. A large plant is impossible for municipal staff to maintain. The big thing is the investment. You go out and borrow $1 billion up front. You've got to pay $60 million a year just in interest on that loan. At the end of 25 years, and that's the life of the plant, that's all the CRD have designed the plant for, 25 years, you're into building it again for another. Let's just say the cost doubled for argument's sake. It'll be another $2 billion in 25 years. If you do a stepped investment, you build one small plant in 2018, second one in 2019, and each year you build, maybe you build 2 a year. But by 2043, when the time comes to replace the plant, you only have to replace the front one, which says that the cost has doubled again, $80 million. It's not a great investment, it's a manageable investment. We're not borrowing huge amounts of money, we're not putting the municipality into great debt. Just go back a little there. One question arises of how we get the water to the site, whether it's Watkis Way or Elk Lake. What I see is a pipeline going along either Highway 1 or Highway 17, above ground. Don't put the pipe underground. Put it in a concrete casing above ground. You can see if it leaks. Cover it with an earth berm. We've just had a leak in Alberta there. That was oil. That's significant. And that pipe was only a year old. If you put one in above ground, you can see it's encased in concrete. It's above ground. It's maintainable. It's easy to use. You can do that either at Watkis or at Elk Lake. pipe size was estimated for Judy, but Councillor Brownhoff, 72 inches. In my estimation, that's way out. You need at the very outside a 42-inch line. You would typically use 2 30-inch. You could start off with a smaller pipe even. I'm sorry if I'm running over here. So
Can I get you to wrap your presentation up?
I'll just finish there.
Yeah, it's very interesting,
What I'll
please.
say is that what I would like to see is that you would include the outlake in your resolution. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rose. If any other members of the public wish to speak, please come forward.
My name is Bob Ferber, 2751 Arbutus Road. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I was not present when this matter was discussed by Council June 22nd, so I'm responding to the minutes of that Council meeting. First of all, the vote to exclude this property, the Watkis property, from consideration by the CRD and the public was far from unanimous, with 5 councillors defeating the motion. But what struck me on reading the minutes was the process. It was flawed. I'm going to address this flawed process by reviewing the objections that were voiced to defeat Councillor Haynes' motion, one by one. Firstly, concern about removing land from the ALR. My question is the concern about reduction of agricultural land or removal of land that could potentially become available for agriculture? My understanding is this land is currently not used for agriculture and may never be used for agriculture. Councillor Haynes' motion included the development of the remainder of the land for greenhouses, which does more for agriculture than leaving it as it is. Moreover, the applicant is not even asking to remove the property from the ALR. Secondly, technical concerns with the site in terms of flow and pumping to this property. As councillors, are you qualified or have you been appointed to make these determinations? As I understand it, these determinations will be made by the CRD in due course as part of their evaluation process. Thirdly, further public consultation is needed in relation to which sites are being considered. This will be a key part, I understand this will be a key part of the selection process or the evaluation process carried out by the CRD. Moreover, the public would have additional say when and if the land is rezoned. Fourthly, putting forth the Watkis property for evaluation by the CRD may discourage other property owners from putting their sites forward. Is it not the case that interested parties have had ample time to propose their lands before the Watkis land was even put on the table? Fifthly, the CRD has already considered and rejected this site. Is this a fact? Even if it is a fact, should the CRD not be the ones to decide whether to review it again? And finally, the property does not meet the criteria used to measure other sites. One must ask, on this one must ask, where the substance is to this argument that it did not meet the CRD criteria. It's pretty vague. In any event, now that Council is going to revisit the Watkis property issue, whether you vote for or against its inclusion in the list of properties for consideration, I ask each councillor to vote on the basis of valid arguments that can be understood by your peers and by us, the public. Thank you.
ask the audience not to take thoughts or show any bias one way or the other. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors and staff members. My name is Haji Charanya. I reside at 757 Genevieve Road, and this evening I'm speaking as an individual. Mr. Mayor, I would like to comment on 3 items, and they are C1, C3, and C5. But before I speak, I just want to invite each and every one of you on our fifth Beckwith Park, Music in the Park, tomorrow evening, 6 to 8. So please do come. And this offer is open for the audience as well. Mr. Mayor, item C1, Watkins Way. Since the debate on this site on June 22nd, I've heard many pros and cons, not only in the council meeting, but through the media and talking to other citizens. So here are my thoughts for your consideration. Number 1, the site is within ALR and outside UCB, which is the Urban Containment Boundary. Now, to me, these are very important and valuable elements of CP. They have guided the land use management in Saanich for a number of decades, and they must be respected. However, my experience suggests that the public works and infrastructure projects are often exempted from these constraints. In addition, I believe generous tree removal is allowed in the ALR land. Number 2, the length and size of piping and associated energy costs are a concern. I agree with this concern based on my engineering experience and a very sketchy knowledge of what's pipe distribution in Saanich. However, I would like to know more details and costs. Number 3, there are numerous other locations for sewage treatment plants. This is true, but in practical terms, we can evaluate only a few which are most feasible. The next argument I heard was, I think it was from Councillor Sanders. First Nations archaeological site is in that area. If that is the case, this would be a major concern. But I read somewhere in the documents that this site is supported by the First Nations people. My sense is any potential cost associated with the archaeological work should be a factor in your decision. The fifth argument was the property does not meet the criteria used to measure the other sites, or the site was considered earlier and deemed to be not acceptable. This is an important point, but again, we need a little bit more details and information. The potential for a greenhouse operation and use of renewable energy for hospital are very attractive proposals, but I'm not sure about their economics. I suggest a caution here because these proposals or ideas may be too optimistic and perhaps proposed as a selling point. Let us have experts and professionals decide. That's one other argument I heard. I do not want to diminish the role of experts and professionals, but I'm always mindful of projects such as Convention Center in Vancouver, where the costs double, our own previous sewage treatment plans, which we have already spent $50 million, and the current cost overrun on the Johnson Street Bridge, where some people estimate cost to be over $100 million. So please remember, our expectations are that the combined east and west, centralized or decentralized, new sewage treatment systems will be superior at much lower cost. So where do we go with this information? Again, I'm relying on my experience that would suggest that the site, while technically not feasible for centralized system, it may be possible or feasible and cost-effective for decentralized system. And that site, or this site, may be worth evaluating further as a decentralized sewage treatment site. There may also be an opportunity to include some portion of overall sewage flow for treatment on this site on a cost-share basis. Therefore, these are my recommendations to Council, should Council decide to move forward on this site. Number one, the site should be considered for a decentralized system as well. Number two, Council should immediately proceed to buy a minimum 2-year option on the required most suitable portion of the land for $10. The option should predetermine the purchase price and other necessary details based on a preliminary engineering assessment. This is not the price of the land. $10 is not the price of the land. It's the price to buy the option. The proponent must provide a written guarantee or irrevocable assurance to construct and operate a greenhouse using energy and reclaimed value from the sewage plant for a minimum period of 20 years. This is an important ALR consideration for me. We must put 10 acres of land for food production. This condition will demonstrate how workable and economical viable these proposals are. I cannot bear to see them as false promises. And number four, if the above conditions 2 and 3 are not met to your satisfaction, within 1 month, I would respectfully ask Council to withdraw their support of this site. If this site is proven to be feasible or cost-effective for a centralized or decentralized system, then all conditions and rights and obligations are in place. If not, they're all null and void at no cost to any party. Just forwarding the site for consideration is not sufficient in my view. I believe Council has the responsibility for managing risk and cost associated with site when you refer this site to CRD. With all due respect, sir, I don't think this should be a pure political exercise or nice thing to do. This should be strictly be prudent financial and business decision. That's my input on item 1. Item C3 is going to be short, and item C5 is going to be short as well.
Haji, I've given you
I know, sir.
quite a bit more than 5 minutes.
So you don't want to hear, you don't want to listen to C3 and C5?
I think in the fairness of those in the audience, I think if you can end your speech, that would be appreciated.
Okay, C5, many thanks to Valatini. I go for option 1, and I would like to see debate on the attachment to B and C. Status quo may not be the right answer for budgeting. We have to have budget and cost disciplines. Thank you.
Thank you, Haji. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak? Please come forward.
Good evening, Your Worship, councilors, staff, people from Saanich. My name is Andy House. I live at 14 Erskine Lane, which, in terms of the Watkins Way proposal, is an unfortunate location. I'm here tonight to urge council to reinforce your decision of June the 22nd, rejecting this resolution. And my basis for asking for this, the vote to reject, is a series of factual points rather than discussion of what might happen or could happen down the road. Reasons for rejecting the resolution: the land in question is in the ALR. That's the fact. And moving land out of the ALR is designed to be difficult. The land in question is not zoned for industrial use. There can be much fewer things more industrial than a sewage treatment plant. There's no industry within several miles of this land. It's open, empty, quasi-agricultural, but there is nothing there. It's within spitting distance of 7 residential clusters. And by spitting distance, I mean you can throw a rock between the land and 7 residential clusters, some of them as much as 20 years old. It's within spitting distance of a public elementary school whose land actually backs onto the land in question. It's within spitting distance of Ronald McDonald House and Victoria General Hospital. Victoria General Hospital and VHA have already closed down a working recycling operation on the corner of Helmcken and Watkins because of environmental concerns. If they're going to close down a little lot like that, how do you think VHA is going to respond to a sewage treatment plant? It's within spitting distance of a protected wetland at the bottom of Stone Ridge, which has come up before. It's within spitting distance of a multi-million-dollar, multi-use residential commercial professional center currently under construction at Helmcken and Watkins. I would ask you to at least consider the impact on the planning cycle for multi-$100,000 units when there's suddenly a sewage plant in the offing. And lastly, I would ask you to consider that this has been brought forward or requested to be brought forward again, supposedly to increase citizen input. I'm in View Royal. I'm the citizen input. All of these things that I mentioned are in View Royal. They are covered by View Royal zoning. They are covered by OCP. And that cute little dotted line on the map between Saanich and View Royal doesn't exist when the wind blows from the north, when the construction trucks come rolling up Watkins. So, as I say, in closing, I simply ask you to reinforce the decision you have already made. Sorry, I have one other point in terms of citizen input. If you put this piece of land into the current CRD process, it's going to go into the east side process, where virtually nobody from the west side is going to see it. For some strange reason, we don't read your things any more often than you read ours. So there isn't going to be citizen input. That's all I have. Again, I would ask you to simply reinforce the decision you've already made. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is Eric Daly. I live at 2923 Mount Baker View Road. And as with June 22nd, I'm speaking on behalf of the Cadbur Bay Residents Association. We still support it. We still think it's a good deal. We think it's a good thing to support. And I guess one thing that went through my mind after I got an opportunity to read through the package that you had on June 22nd, and then I heard comments about that had been brought up before at the CRD or in camera or some other place. And I'm just wondering for the council members whether they had the same information at both times when they turned it down before and this time. Was it the same fulsome package or was it an executive summary the first time? I don't know. But that's up to you folks that have seen it twice. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Mayor and Council, my name is Sue Henry. I live at 3906 Holland Avenue in Saanich. I'm here to express my opposition to the resolution for the adoption of the Watkins Way Sewage Treatment Strategy motion. The resolution is contrary to the official community plan in several sections, as it threatens the continuation and reason for the urban containment boundary. Establishing a sewage treatment facility on Watkins Way would require the installation of a sewer line past the urban containment boundary and would introduce sewer servicing beyond the urban containment boundary. This would put increased pressure on the elimination of the urban containment boundary and encourage the development and densification of rural lands, which is contrary to the official community plan and regional growth strategy. In the future, it may be necessary for local and regional government to ensure our ability to produce our food locally. To ensure that we have the land mass to produce our food locally, it is imperative to maintain our rural agricultural lands. The addition of greenhouses on the subject property would be inadequate for ensuring food sustainability in the future. and suggesting that this would be the solution to the development and densification of our agricultural lands through the elimination or alteration of the urban containment boundary is ridiculous. What is also ridiculous is the reconsideration of installing a large pipe and pumping sewage inland to be treated, adding more money to the final cost of the project. It is outrageous the amount of money already spent on this project, and we haven't even broken ground. Removal of the Watkins Way property from the agricultural land reserve sets a precedence for removing other viable agricultural land from the reserve in in order to use the properties for industrial non-agricultural use. This contravenes the purpose of the agricultural land reserve. I am opposed to the resolution because it contradicts the official community plan in several sections, as it threatens the continuation and reason for the urban containment boundary. The official community plan addresses the urban containment boundary in the following sections.